honored to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, Ronnie Keeter. Ronnie is the Deputy Engineer at the North Carolina Department of Transportation. He's been at NCDOT for over 27 years and has served in a number of field engineering positions across the state, including Division Engineer in Division 4. He came to Raleigh in 2019 as Eastern Deputy Chief Engineer, where he's responsible for directing construction, maintenance, and operations programs across the state's 7 Eastern Highway divisions. Ronnie is a 1992 graduate of UNC Charlotte, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering. He currently lives in Halifax with his wife and 2 children. Ronnie, we are very grateful to you for your time today. And with that, it's over to you. Ronnie, you may be on mute.
All right.
There we are.
Thank you, Ward. I'd like to begin by thanking the Chamber for your support of NCDOT and transportation initiatives. I'd also like to thank your member engineering firms and contractors for helping NCDOT deliver important transportation projects. Okay, next. To paint a good picture of where we are, I'm going to look back at the past few years and review our accomplishments that the department has made. Next, I'll review how the department has been affected by the COVID pandemic. Then we'll take a look at the state and federal actions that have taken place to help DOT through the pandemic. And lastly, we'll take a look at one of the things that we're doing to help prepare for the future of transportation. Our former Secretary Trogdon and Chief Operating Officer Bobby Lewis made streamlining project delivery one of the department's goals upon their return to NCDOT. There are 3 basic types of planning documents for transportation projects. Our goal in streamlining project delivery, we reduced categorical exclusion documents from 52 months to 10 months. Environmental assessments from 65 months to 18 months. And EISs, the goal is to reduce those from 86 months to 36 months. In addition to saving planning dollars, we're doing more projects through categorical exclusions as seen on the figure to your right. 85 to 90% of our projects are now done through categorical exclusions. In operations, in maintenance activities, over the past 4 years, we've resurfaced over 18,000 miles of roads to maintain their condition. 18,000 miles of roads is roughly a quarter of our system. We've replaced over 450 bridges, and for the first time in history, our structurally deficient percentages were less than 10%. In increased TIP delivery from 1.6 billion to 3 billion, we have taken on our first widening of I-95, widening I-26 from Henderson to Buncombe County, widening I-440 in Wake County, significant progress on I-295 in Fayetteville. Multiple sections of I-42 or US 70 are being brought to freeway standards. Acceleration of 540 extension to I-40, completion of the Greensboro Loop, and multiple sections of Winston-Salem Loop are underway. By streamlining the planning and design process, we have a number of shelf-ready projects. Prior to 2017, NCDOT had little to no shelf-ready projects. Today, we have 82 TIP projects ready for construction at an estimated construction value of $200 million. We have 28 TIP projects that are ready for construction after utilities are relocated at a value of $137 million. In addition, 66 bridges valued at over 100 million are ready for construction, while 30 more bridges will be ready for construction once utilities are relocated at a value of nearly 100 million. This is significant because if we do have a federal stimulus plan, we'll have projects ready for construction. Historically, in stimulus packages, the feds want to know what states have shovel-ready projects and how quick we can get them on the street and get the contractors back to work. Shifting to storm response, NCDOT has been challenged to complete $820 million worth of repairs in the last 4 years, exceeding the cost of the previous 12 years added together. During Florence, we had nearly 2,500 closures and opened those closures with either temporary or permanent repairs within 6 weeks. This has put a strain on our department's finances even prior to the effects of COVID. We have been fortunate to have only a few counties with storm damages so far this year, being already on 12 named storms at the end of August. And I should also mention here that the folks in the Gulf are in our thoughts and prayers while they're struggling with Hurricane Laura. Next, the map on the left shows the sites that were damaged during Florence. Our maintenance unit developed a Survey 123 program to help our field employees document the initial damages and document and geolocate those sites with tablets, iPads, and cell phones. This helps determine the magnitude of damage that can be reviewed by everyone in real time. Okay. This is a review of our revenue accomplishments. And the first item is August redistribution. August redistribution is basically the amount of extra funding the department can receive by FHWA at the end of the year because we have delivered our projects and other states hadn't delivered theirs. In 2017, we had 113 million. 2018 was 166. 2019 was 152 or 115. And by the end of the month, we're expecting to receive about 160 millions this year. In the middle there are the federal grants and awards that we've received since 2017. And at the bottom are the changes in revenue since 2016, going from 4.5 billion in 2016 to 5.3 billion in 2020. The impacts of the pandemic include a reduction in travel, which equals a lower motor fuels tax for us. Fewer vehicles purchased, which equals a lower highway use tax. And pandemic restrictions to protect citizens and employees have equaled lower DMV collections for us. The certified revenue forecast was $500 million less than the previous forecast due to the pandemic. The next slide shows vehicle miles traveled. Vehicle miles traveled is our best indicator of revenues we can expect to receive through fuel purchases. The chart shows the effects of the pandemic on the miles traveled since March. And as you can see, in April or so, we were nearly at half as many vehicle miles traveled during those times. Next. This slide is a review of the actions taken by the department and the legislature to help the department through this tough time. We have suspended activities for future projects, which include PE, right-of-way, and construction. And through House Bill 77, we established a goal to keep active projects going while protecting maintenance dollars. The immediate impacts to cash were in mid-July, we received Build NC 2019 proceeds in the amount of 140 million. In mid-August, we were able to get Garvey reserves in the amount of $132 million. Protecting maintenance and have the ability to respond to storms, the legislature adjusted the motor fuels revenue formula distribution between the Highway Fund and the Highway Trust Fund. Prior to July 1, the percent distribution was 71% to the Highway Fund and 29% to the Highway Trust Fund. In fiscal year 21, the distribution will be 81% to the Highway Fund and 22% to the Highway Trust Fund. In 22, it will be an 80-20 split. And in 2023, it'll be a 75-25 split. It'll remain a 75-25 split unless the legislature takes further action in 2023. This increased our general maintenance reserves to over $530 million, which was around in the mid 300s before. Combining Building C 2020 and 2021 bond sales in the amount of $700 million to be used on active projects was another action that that House Bill 77 allowed us to do, and we're in the process of working with the Treasurer to get those bonds sold now. The increased Garvey ceiling on debt service from 15 to 20% when compared to the federal formula funds will allow us to more capacity for more Garvey projects to help us in the future as well. The next slide, this just shows you at a glance the number of projects throughout the state that are being delayed due to the reduction in revenues due to COVID. On the federal front, the federal actions to assist DOT, we have had no action to date for access to the $300 million from the CARES Act. It was to replace revenue. This expires September 1st, so unless we get some action pretty quick, we won't be able to have access to that $300 million. There's been no agreement yet in Washington for a stimulus package, and our FAST Act is due to expire September 30th. This will likely be extended through continuing resolutions. We'd rather see some decisions, some permanent decisions made, because it's a steady, more consistent flow of funding. Next, I would like to highlight an Infogrant Award for unique transportation. In October 2017, DOT submitted a grant application for improvements to I-95 and US 70 for future I-42. In June of 2018, we were awarded a $147 million federal infrastructure grant. This pilot is an opportunity to partner with US DOT and the industry to address transportation needs and promote data sharing through fiber networks. Okay, the I-95 improvements include widening to 8 lanes from Murphy Road, which is at mile marker 55, to I-40, which is at mile marker 81. This will help to provide reliability and connectivity for Fort Bragg. This project also includes installing a fiber optic trunk line and microcell towers along the whole 180-mile stretch of I-95 from the South Carolina border to the Virginia border. The improvements to US 70 or future I-42 include upgrading US 70 to freeway standards. This will support the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Cherry Point Marine Base, Camp Lejeune Marine Base, and the Port of Moorhead. This project will also install a fiber trunk line and microcell towers along the full 125-mile stretch between I-40 and Havilah. This broadband project will prepare us for the future transportation need for autonomous vehicles at a considerable cost savings by deploying ITS equipment and improving network reliability. Maintenance and operations costs of this network will be reduced to the department through revenue that is generated by the concessionaire that is selected. Through industry forums, shortlisting, and industry interviews, we will have the preferred track and the selected bidder in November of this year. And lastly, I would like to thank again the Chamber for your efforts in helping with transportation issues. And we're also grateful for our partners with the engineering firms and construction industry. And I would also like to thank our fellow panelist, Ward Nye, for working with the First Commission and their hard work for developing revenue options that we look forward to early next year. And with that, I'll turn it back over.
Ronnie, thank you so much. This is Ward Nye. Can you hear me well at this moment?
Yes, sir.
Hey, fantastic. Well, number one, thank you so much for your graciousness and those insights. Actually, a few questions have come in, and I had a couple I wanted to run by you, if you don't mind, for just a moment.
Yes, sir.
Hey, a couple of things. One, you talked about the projects that are ready on the shelf, and thank you so much for going through those. That's a big deal, and it's important for North Carolina. And I remember when we went through some of the previous stimulus programs that the country saw as we were coming out of the financial crisis before, it wasn't necessarily an NCDOT issue, it was an issue across the United States that it looked like there weren't as many projects that were shovel ready at the time as America would have hoped. As you look at where we sit today with projects that could go with some degree of either stimulus or a new highway bill, how does it look today from your perspective versus where it was, let's call it a decade ago?
Well, referring back to the slide, a decade ago, we had little to no shelf-ready projects. So, and with that long process, we had to develop projects which for years, we wouldn't have benefited as much as we would today by having our projects that are actually shelf and shovel ready, which means just the 2 month or month and a half period that it would take to advertise the project, we could have these projects under construction.
Ronnie, one of the things I think we're all sensitive to, obviously the FAST Act, which we're operating under today, expires at the end of September. And the likelihood of having another federal highway bill that's ready to go on September 30th, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say we're probably not going to be there.
Yes,
and that means we're probably going to be back in some form of a continuing resolution, which you and I have seen before, and we've kind of struggled through those. The conversation right now, at least that I'm hearing, is the federal government is looking at either a 1 year or 2 year continuing resolution, actually not intending for it to last for a full year, or certainly not for 2 years. But I think the aim is to put a longer term continuing resolution so state departments of transportation can feel some degree of confidence in continuing to bid work during that interim period from the end of the FAST Act to whatever the FAST Act's successor is going to be. In your view, if they do a 1 year continuing resolution or a 2 year, does it matter from NCDOT's perspective from a timing viewpoint on how the federal government looks at a potential continuing resolution?
Yes, sir. We would like a longer term, more consistent continuing resolution. When it's not as choppy, then the amount of money that we can get from FHWA is more consistent. And also if the continuing resolutions are choppy, then the amount of money we get on that August redistribution could be affected from that too. So North Carolina could lose out on that $160 million that we're expecting at the end of August.
Understood. One thing you mentioned in your slides, and I thought it was really well placed, you talked a little bit about the Garvey bonds. And I think Garvey bonds are something that if you've been around transportation a long time, you get a sense of what that is. I know they're grant anticipation revenue vehicles, but basically those are bonds anticipating future revenues. And as we go forward, we had one question that came in just wanting to get a little bit of a better feel around Garvey bonds, but have I captured that relatively accurately?
Yes, sir. And I believe the Garvey is a 15-year payback that we can use. We have debt service on that 15 years, and now is a pretty decent time too, because the bonds are so cheap right now. So we could really leverage our dollars and build a lot more construction projects with less dollars.
Well, we wound up in a recession when we didn't think we would, and borrowing money in a recession, if you can, it's not a bad time to do it. You know, one of the things that you mentioned too is obviously North Carolina has had a lot of storms, and you and your teams have done a great job in recovering from those. So thank you for the extraordinary work that you did, particularly after Florence. I know one of the issues that we have struggled with in particular is assuring that we're getting the FEMA reimbursement on some of the monies that we've expended. How has that gone so far? Do we still have significant monies that are due in from FEMA today?
Yes, sir, we do. But we're working with emergency management and working with FEMA, trying to streamline the process. They require a lot of documentation and a lot of paperwork, and we provide those, and our technology is getting better every day with providing the information that they need. But I think it's one office in Houston that we deal with FEMA for our reimbursement. And if they have questions about a particular project, if they don't get an answer in a day or so, then that project goes to the bottom of the stack, and you begin again. So we've got some room for improvement, but we realize the struggles that FEMA has too. Our partners at FHWA are really good about helping us through the emergencies. And I think, you know, the reason why we don't hear from other states so much about the FEMA reimbursement is North Carolina's unique in that we maintain the secondary road system. And most of our reimbursements through FEMA come through secondary road systems. And in other states, those are done by a county basis. And so that's the reason why we don't hear much from other states about that reimbursement process.
Well, Ronnie, you make such a great point, because I think a lot of people don't understand the pure number of miles that NCDOT maintains. My recollection is, for a number of years, we were second only to Texas. We might be behind Texas and Florida today, but again, if you look at the size of North Carolina versus the size of Texas, it gives you a sense of really how much your department is trying to take care of. The other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on briefly is you mentioned the action on the $300 million, I think, that was out there in the CARES Act. And if something didn't happen with that relatively soon, because the clock was ticking, it was going to slip away. Can you give the folks who are on today's call a sense of what would have to happen for us to be able to have access to that $300 million, and what would have to happen soon? I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding on how we could go about that.
It would take a clarification from Congress for our legislature and our folks to be comfortable with replacing. The hang up was that they didn't want the $300 million to replace revenue, and that's and I think initially maybe the intent was for us to use that money with the highway fund, but because of the wording and because of our legislature's look on that, we shouldn't try to use that money with the fear of having to pay it back, because I think maybe West Virginia, they went ahead and interpreted that they could use it at the risk of having to pay that $300 million back.
Got it. Okay. Ronnie, again, thank you so much for your time and for your insights and your leadership at NCDOT. It means a lot to us, and your presence today and your conversation with us means a lot. Have a great day and be safe. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed it.